Hi, so I'm John J. Cabola, the creator behind John J. Images. So on this channel, I'll talk about adventure, nature, and culture through a Filipino American perspective. So the topic I want to talk about today is some theories I have on island time or Filipino time. So I've recently lived in Philippines for around a year now, and I can understand more and more why Filipino time or island time exists. So just to give you a short little backstory is we schedule things here and there. We like to do things with our friends. We set a time, but we know that most of our friends are not going to be there at that time, or they may be considerably late from a more Western or more American perspective. Maybe they'll be an hour late, 2 hours late, or maybe they just don't show up at all. And I think that goes back to the whole running on island time or Filipino time thing. Now let me explain some of my theories on thoughts as to why Filipino time exists. So one point I would like to bring out is that when you live in the Philippines, you will realize that most Filipinos, even though they're older and they've worked for years, most Filipinos, at least from what I see, from my experience in Baguio City, most Filipinos do not have cars. They do not have driver's licenses. Because Baguio City specifically is a relatively large city with an extensive public transport system from what I can observe. So please keep in mind, these are my personal observations. Yours or someone else's may be totally different, especially because I am viewing this from a Filipino American perspective. So most of them do not have driver's licenses or cars because public transport is it's found everywhere. That's how most people get around, even from city to other city. There's the buses here. The bus lines here are actually quite impressive. I would say I haven't really used it much, but I know that they go from city to city, long distance, and it looks like a major business here in Philippines. And so number two is that the pace of life on the islands like Philippines is just a lot slower as compared to something like Hong Kong or San Francisco or what have you, right? So now I think the reason why the pace of life is much slower on these islands in the Philippines is the tropical climate and probably the challenge of how much money there is to be made in one day. So if you work really hard in a developed country, you could probably make a considerable amount of money in one day if you're comparing it to an international level, right? But if you work really hard in a developing or a third world country in one day, it's probably going to be a fraction of the amount of money that you would make in a developed world. That's why a lot of work is shipped overseas. That's just the effect of a global connected economy. So basically, that idea, if you could wrap your head around it, their time, obviously all of us humans have a limited amount of time, but everyone values their time differently. And some people put a dollar value or a price value per hour on their time. I've lived here in Philippines for around a year now, and I've really realized that the Filipino Americans living in the United States and the developed or first world countries are actually very privileged when you look at it from an international scale. But the other side of that is that if you want to live comfortably in those developed nations, if you want to live comfortably in those first world countries, then you would probably most likely have developed a first world work ethic or a first world style of 9-to-5 mentality or rise and grind, or something of that mentality. Basically, if you want to live comfortably in the first world, you usually tend to work harder and you have a much faster and just a more aggressive mindset when it comes to time. But when you live in a place where there's only so much money to be made for the certain amount of skills that you have, it kind of explains why people are way more lax and why things take forever and things get delayed and things get slow. So there, I think that's one of my theories. Whether it's really correct or not is obviously up for debate. It's just my opinion. This is just an opinion of some random guy on the internet that's lived in the Philippines recently for around a year. So please take this with a grain of salt. These are my observations. So yeah, so most of them do not have cars. Most of them do not have driver's licenses. The amount of money to be made in a day is just not as... $5 per day is much different than $300 per day. Let's say that, okay? Let's say that. And then another thing is probably... Another thing why Filipino time exists is because if you keep growing up in this type of society where everything is kind of just late or falls apart or it's done last minute, and if you grew up like that, then there's a possibility that you might take those habits into adulthood, and that furthers, that kind of furthers the culture or the vibe of society. So yeah, so those are my thoughts. Now on tips on how to deal with this is that when you're scheduling events with your Filipino friends, do not expect them to come very early, especially if it's a social event, and if it's a rainy day, because public transport can be harder to use on rainy days, especially in Baguio City, because Baguio City can basically be translated to storm city, Baguio. The Tagalogs use a word that sounds like Baguio for storm. So basically, do not expect them to come on time. They might come a half hour late or 1 hour late, or they might not show up at all, depending on the weather, and that's just the pace of life in Philippines. And so even though I am Filipino American myself, even though I experienced that Filipino time in California, where there's many Filipinos, there was kind of a stark difference. It was kind of like, I wouldn't say night and day, but kind of, as to when I compared the pace of life in California versus the pace of life in Philippines. So I would say it's definitely different. And I'm going to be making other videos trying to figure out why the pace of life is different and showing some more examples on that. So I hope you guys found this a bit of a more casual video entertaining. The algorithm said that my last video that I uploaded similar to this was liked, so hopefully I gain more traction with this video. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you have suggestions on what you want me to talk about Filipino American life, please drop it in the comments below. And yeah, it's a Monday, so it's a Monday, start of a new week, and so I want to be more consistent within the next several weeks of posting videos. So here's one for Monday. Nothing fancy. If you've seen my other videos, you know that I'm capable of cinematography and photography and all that other stuff. Well, first of all, thank you for sticking this long. This video is getting kind of long. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have probably already clicked away and watched another video, but thank you for viewing this video. Thank you for your time. Basically, it's a new start of the week. I want to be more consistent, and I know that I'm capable of higher productions, but I just want to get something out there. I just want to get the ball rolling, gather some data points on what people like and what people can care less about, so I have a better idea of where to take my YouTube channel within the next few days, and what I should be talking about within the next few weeks of this whole YouTube channel endeavor thing. So there you go, a casual talking head video to kick off Monday. So hopefully I'll be more consistent with uploading videos on Filipino American life. Thank you for watching.